All right, onward and upward. So we just got done looking at changing percents to decimals, decimals to percents, fractions to percents. So we covered quite a bit. Now this last part gets into some applications of percents, which you've probably seen before somewhere, some point in time. But if not, we're just going to do a quick overview and then we'll jump in. So there's three parts typically to a percent problem. And those three parts are the rate, which is also called the percent, which always follows the percent. The percent symbol always follows it. So I like to call it the rate. Some books call it something else. Some books call it the percent, but in this textbook, I believe they call it the rate. The next piece that you're going to need to know is the base. So we're going to use the letter B for that, and that usually follows the word of and is the whole amount. And then the last piece is the part, and that's usually a fractional part of the base. So an example I give here is 4 is 80% of 5. So the first thing that I always recommend is to identify the rate, so R in this case. So R is this 80%. So that's done. The next piece to identify is the base. So that's your B, and that follows the word of. So here's your of, so that means that this is going to be my B. And then by default, the last piece has to be your part. So, and you get a P. Once you've identified those three pieces, now you can put it into a proportion, or basically one fraction equal to another fraction. So the phrasing for it is here. Part is the base, is percent is to 100. Okay, what does it look like? Well, P over B equals R over 100. Now, some of you probably remember this, told you a different way. And it's usually called is over of equals percent over 100. It's the same exact thing. So if you remember this is over of equals percent over 100, then use it. It's the same thing. But if you don't remember it, then I would advise you do it this way. Identify using your three letters, and then this setup is always the same way you're going to do it. It's just that sometimes you'll know different pieces of it. So let's take a look at some and you'll see what I mean. Okay. Work each problem involving percent. So find 10.5% of 28. So what pieces do we know and what piece are we looking for? So remember, start with your R. R is your percent, so we do have that. Base is next, and that follows the word of, so we have that as well. So the only piece we don't know is P. So P is unknown. Now that we have our pieces, let's put them into our proportion. So P is on top. Whoops. P is on top, and then base is on the bottom, so 28 equals R, which is 10.5 over 100. Now we don't need the percent symbol in here because we're taking care of that by putting it over 100. So that's why we can just lose it. So there's your setup for this. So now here comes the part where you have to know a little bit of algebra, very little, I promise. The next piece we're going to do to try to solve this is we're going to cross multiply. So remember, we kind of saw that with the fractions before. If we wanted to show one fraction equals another, we cross multiply, and those products should be equal. We're going to use that right now. So let's go and say, okay, I like to do the cross product with the variable, with the letter first. So I'm going to do the 100 times P on the left. So I'm just going to write it as 100P. And on the right, I'm going to multiply these two together. Now, I don't know what that is, but we can find out really fast. 28 times 10.5 equals 294. So 294 is on the other side. So step one was to get your proportion. Step two is to cross multiply, so you get this. And now there's one more step. Do you know what it is? How do we get P all by itself? And the answer is to divide. Yeah, you got it. So if we divide now, we want to divide both sides by 100. Whatever number is in front of your letter, that's what you're going to divide by on both sides. So the 100s cancel each other out on the left. And that's why P is all alone now. So P should be equal to 2.94. And then you're done. That's the answer. So not anything too terrible, but you've got to have those letters correct. If those letters are incorrect, then that's going to throw off your answer. So you've got to be careful. All right, let's take a look at the next one. What percent of 30 is 45? So what do we know and what do we need to know, or what do we need to find? Well, what percent? Well, we don't know what it is, but we do know that that's our R. So R is unknown. Of 30, so whatever follows of is your base, so that's B, and so that means this is going to be P. All right, let's put it into our proportion. P on top, B on the bottom. So 45 over 30 equals R over 100. Now, some of you are probably thinking, well, do I have to use the letter R? Can't I use an X? Or couldn't I use an X over here as well? Sure. You can always use another letter if you don't like the P's and R's and B's. As long as you're getting the answer right, that's the important piece. Okay, so now what's our next step? So remember, we got to cross multiply. So again, do the one with the letter first. So we get 30R equals 45 times 100. We can do that in our head, right? 4,500. All right, and now the last step. So 30 gets divided out on both sides. So the 30s cancel, and so R equals, let me shift it up just a little bit, looks like 150. Now, we do have to be able to be careful, because when we find R, what is R? R is a percent. So don't just leave your answer blank like this as 150. It's 150%. So if you forget the percent, you're going to lose points. So don't forget it. All right, let's go on to the next couple. So more of the same thing. So we got 40% of what number is 150? Now they're giving us our percent, so we know that's R. But now what's following of is unknown. So that is our B, which is a question mark. And so then the 150 has got to be our P. All right, so now we can get our proportion. So P over B. So 150 over B equals 40 over 100. Now cross multiply. So let's do the 40 and the B together first. And 150 times 100. I think I got enough zeros there, right? Yep. And then divide. Now, once you get the hang of this, obviously you can skip some steps. You don't have to write it as detailed as I did on the previous ones. So just make sure you divide properly. So B equals what? Well, if you're not sure, again, use your calculator. I think it's 375, but better double check. Nope, I was right. 375. Now, the one other thing to keep in mind is there's no units so far in any of this. We had to worry about percentages on the R, but other values didn't really have any units. You know, we're not talking about books or trees or anything like that. Otherwise, we should probably put those units on there as well. So just keep that in mind. When there's units, always remember to put those units on your answer. All right, let's try one more, and then we're going to see one more application, which I think I'm going to squeeze into this video. What number is 85% of 512? So we got our percent, so that's our R. Of 512, so that's our B. And so what number must be our P, and we don't know what that is. So P P over 512, 85 over 100. So what do we do next? We got to cross multiply. So we got 100 times P first, and 85 times 12. I definitely don't know what that is. So let's see what that is. Times 512. 43,520. All right. So there's that. And now the last step is to divide. So P equals 435.2. All right, so now we should be good with that problem. So that one's done. So now for the last application, it's again another application of percents, but it's done just a little bit differently. Now the textbook has some formula in there that they use. I've kind of coined my own formula from over the years. I think I might have borrowed it from another textbook someplace else. But it works for both percent increase and decrease. So that's why I like it. It's just one formula to know versus two. So percent increase or decrease is equal to the change over the original value times 100%. Okay, well, let's see it in action. Between July 1st, 2000 and July 1st, 2007, the estimated population of Pittsfield, Massachusetts declined from 134,953 to 129,798 people. What was the percent decrease to the nearest tenth? Okay, so percent decrease, I'll abbreviate. So the change. So what do they mean by change? Well, how much did it actually drop? That's what they want to know in this case. So if we want to find out how much it dropped by, we have to do what operation? We have to subtract. That's correct. So 134,953 minus 129,798. Okay, we'll do that in a second. But what are we going to divide it by? What was the original value before it changed? That's what they're asking for. So it was the 134, and then it changed to this. So the 134 value has to go on the bottom. And now we're on our way. So let's do our subtraction. So we got 134,953 minus 129,798, 5155. So 5155 divided by 134,953. So I already got it in my calculator. So let's divide it by 134,953 equals, okay, long messy decimal. So 0.038198. I'm going to round that to a 0.0382. So times 100%. Now, that times 100%, all that's doing is just changing the decimal to a percent. So as long as you remember to do that last change, then you don't really need to write it, but don't forget to do it. So 3.82%. And now it does say to round it to the nearest tenth. Now, I already went against my rules and said not to round it, but if you do enough decimal places, then usually you're going to be fine. But in this case, technically we're not right, because we had to round it to the nearest tenth. So this should be 3.8%. And there's our answer. All right, let's try one more, and that wraps up this chapter. After 1 year on the job, Grady got a raise from $10.50 per hour to $11.34 per hour. What was the percent increase in his hourly wage? Okay, well, so we still need the change. So we still need to subtract. So 11 34 minus 1050. That will be on top, but what's on the bottom? What was it originally before it changed? It was originally $10.50. So that's what goes on the bottom. So don't automatically think the bigger number always goes on the bottom. That's not the case. It depends on what it started at before it changed. Very important. So now it's just crunch it on your calculator. So this looks like 0.84. So yeah, I just subtracted that already. So 0.84 divided by $10.50 equals 0.08. 0.08. Which gives us 8%. 8% salary increase. Wow, that's pretty darn good nowadays. Well, who knows? But okay, so that wraps up this section, and we're going to be looking at some review coming up, and we got an exam coming up. So let's get ready. See you soon.